if I don't write these. I'm Spike Lee at the audio. Back in my barrio. Parties got shot up, so I put up on my cardio.
Hey guys, what's up? Happy Easter, Easter 2025. He has risen. You know what I'm saying? If you're a Christian and you go to church on Easter Sunday, whether it's the early morning service or whatever, you know, you hear that he has risen, he is risen or whatever all the time. And it's almost, I just want to say some stuff real quick, you know, and this is whether a Christian, an atheist, a Jew, a Hindu, Islam, whatever. I want to throw something out there to you guys. We see this holiday, and by the way, you know, Easter Sunday happens at the very end of the Passover festival and Thanksgiving feast and everything for the Israelites. And the reason why is because, you know, Jesus came for the Passover festival when he got captured and put to death, you know, and then he rose on the third day to prove he defeated sin and death and punishment and stuff, and took our punishment, and we get that. That's the miracle, if you will, or the theme or point of the Easter, you know, service. But with me, in the way I like to preach to my family, and when I get a chance to preach at churches or when I go places to preach, I see it as something different. I don't see him rising from the death as being the miracle or the point of that story. And if we say the point of the story is the miracle, you know. And here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to use another story from the Bible first. Sermon on the Mount. One of the most powerful preachings that we have recorded of Christ, you know, when he went up on the Mount and he gave the Sermon on the Mount. And then what happened afterward? You know, multitudes of fives and tens and thousands of people came to listen to him preach. And then when he got done, he fed them all. You know, there was only a little bit of bread and a little bit of fish, and he fucking blessed it, and he turned it and he fed it. And everyone's like, great story, great miracle. You know, he fed 1 million people. That's not the story. That's not the miracle. That's the point of the story is the preaching, the Sermon on the Mount, what he said. You know, how he challenged your value of the 10 Commandments. You know, you say you never committed adultery, but if your eyes freaking look at other women and fantasize, you've committed adultery in your mind 10 million times, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that's an awesome sermon. And that's the miracle, was getting that sermon put out to millions of people, and the miracle of that being one of the only sermons that are in the Bible. You know, he talked at the walk to Damascus or whatever, you know, after he rose from the dead with other people, you know, and that just says they talked and walked, but it doesn't say what he said. But it says what he said there, you know, powerful message. And that's what I think the whole point or the celebration, if you will, of Christ coming. You know, it's not to give us that free get out of jail free card that we sometimes misinterpret, especially with our children. You know, Christ came to earth to die for your sins. So if you believe in him, you'll not perish but have everlasting life. Well, then people are like, I have that get out of jail free cards. You know what I'm saying? Some people do think like that. You know, Christ died for my sins. I'm going to fall short. Of course we're going to fall short. But that's not what Christ came for. So that's not what Easter's for, or Christmas or anything. Christ came and he lived on earth. He got hungry like men. He got tempted like men. And Christ was so counterculture. You know, he said, I didn't come to abolish the law, but fulfill the prophecy. But then what are some of the other things he said? Man's needs supersede religious regulation, and he ate and did work on Sundays to feed people. You know, he wiped the feet of men. He treated women like they were equals. He did a lot of stuff the people of the time, whether they were Jews or Gentiles or whatever, didn't really understand. So I'm saying to you, and I'm challenging you, instead of just saying, oh, he has risen, you know, let's go find some Easter eggs. By the way, if I can get my kids a lot of candy that I like to eat. But anyways, instead of saying that, let's think of the real point. You know, if we're celebrating today, Christ 3 days ago, finally his life and his ministry on earth came to an end, and he beat death and punishment of sin by rising back. Let's put his ministry on earth and his examples that he set on earth to work. You know what I'm saying? Let's put that, what will Jesus do? So my challenge to you, if you're watching this, be nice, be kind. You know, whether it's a regulation, a culture, tradition, question it. Question it. Question if you're living a life worthy of a celebration.